all three of you have created great change in the world. Do you feel it was intentional, or did it feel incidental, like it happened along the journey?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think that there is an incidental influence that you might have as a marginalized person or as a young person who is brave and speaking out about your journey. I think that people really connect with storytelling and they get so much out of it. But at the same time, I think that it is also a choice that I make. I think as a young person, I came out as trans in 2013. And although that really isn't that long ago, the cultural landscape for being trans in that time was completely different. I didn't have any representation of trans people whatsoever. I didn't know that trans men existed really. I didn't know that non-binary people existed. I didn't have Laverne Cox and, even Caitlyn Jenner and, so much representation of transness in the media really, like compared to when I was in year 12. And so I guess my goal in my work was always to be the person that I never had growing up, was to be that person. I don't love the term role model or inspiration or anything like that, because I think it's too weighted and I think it pedestals someone beyond humanity. But I wanted someone that I could look to know that I would be okay, to know that I was real and that I was valid and the experiences I was having were real. I think that there's this like collective gaslight, which is a way of denying people's reality that happens in our world when you live in a world that is so dominated by majority narratives, that is so dominated by able-bodied narratives, by white narratives, by upper middle class narratives, straight, cisgender, like it's so hard to imagine yourself into existence when that is all you're seeing all the time. And so I think being able to write my book, for example, and write myself into existence and be the author of my own story when so many people had shaped that story for me or projected a story onto me was incredibly empowering. And I think that is such an amazing thing that young people can do, is write yourself into existence, is assert who you are and say who you are and stand up for what you believe in and not let anyone else tell your story louder than you do, because that is what you are an expert in. You are an expert in your own story and you get to write it for yourself. No one else is more of an expert in that than you are.
I think because I had cancer at quite a young age, so I was about 3 years old when that happened, and it's quite an informative time as a child. And I remember going through treatment and all the elders around me, like my mum, my grandparents, my father would always say, no, you've got to be strong, you've got to be strong. And when you're 3 years old, you have no idea what that means. You're like, how do I do that? And somehow, like, I think children are quite resilient in the fact that they somehow figure out how to do that. And so I had quite an early crash course in learning about resilience and learning about how to find that inner strength. And I've taken that throughout my whole entire life. So I think that it definitely wasn't intentional for me. I think that that's how I've learned how to live. And that's how I've applied myself to many different areas of my life, especially with the music industry being so fickle and so challenging, especially for me as a woman of color, who's also a Pacific Island woman as well. It's really served me well, having learnt how to be that resilient and how to operate as a minority person within the context of this country. So yeah, I don't think it was intentional at all. I just felt like everybody needs to learn. Everybody has the right to get in touch with that inner strength. Everyone has it. Not everybody knows how to get in touch with that. Fortunately for me, unfortunately, I learned that at quite an early age. So my whole life's work is about inspiring people to feel like they can reach for more than what they've been given. And yeah, I'm not mad about it. And that's my story.
I mean, once again, I would have to say it's a combination of both. There is without a doubt a number of unintentional aspects of my pathway to creating change, which I absolutely 100%, never would have chosen for myself. I mean, my entire journey to creating change is predicated on a diagnosis of cancer when I was 16 years old, and a series of twists and turns, which leaves me still in treatment to this day. And it's one of the great contradictions of my life in the sense that I am immensely proud of the change that I've been able to bring about. I realize how lucky I am to be able to have brought about change and aided the lives of other people, but it's still one of the great unknowns in my life. If I had to go back and do it all again, knowing the pain that I would experience, the pain that though my loved ones would experience watching me go through it, if I had to go back and do it all again and had a choice about whether or not I would be diagnosed with cancer, would I do it? And it's an answer that I don't know the answer to. It's a question I don't know the answer to. So to some regards, it has been incidental, and there are other incidental aspects of my life that have led to me taking up opportunities to bring about change, which I don't have much control over. I mean, I'm not going to front a lot of my ability to create change and advocate for things like the clinical trial and serve as an ambassador for Canteen, and in later life, in my work as a journalist, elevate the stories of others, is built upon the fact that via both the verbal and written word, I am excellent at bullshitting. If it hadn't been for that sort of skill set, would I have been able to implement change? Probably not. But then again, at the same time, there definitely is some level of conscious decision to create change. I mean, obviously, as I said before, it's been immensely rewarding to be able to advocate for clinical trials, take on leadership positions in Canteen. But at the same time, it's something I really wanted to do to give back, because there was also a sense of obligation there that, given how bad things during my cancer period, my major cancer treatment got, the fact, I probably should have died, I have to think that, the support I received from Canteen, the mental well-being, provided me with a number of tools which helped me internally keep fighting. And there's a great sense of obligation in my minds that comes with that. And so there was some level of deliberate embracing of that. But I think it's important to also recognize that that was just my particular moves to A, cope with my cancer diagnosis, and B, embrace my ability to create change. That's my technique, and it doesn't make the technique of anybody else who are trying to implement change any less valid.
Thank you, Joey, and thank you everyone for your answers. I feel like I'm really drawn to the humility in all of your answers, that these are three people that have absolutely made incredible change, and yet the first thing they go to is how everything around them is what made them create the change that they did. It reminds me of a quote. One of my favorite musicians is Pharrell Williams, and he has this thing about, it's the universe and its moments that conspire towards your success. It's not just the actions of one person.